Brought to you by CGTN Europe.
I'm Stephen Cole. Welcome to the Agenda podcast.
Joining us today on this Agenda special is His Excellency Liu Xiaoming, China's ambassador to the UK for more than a decade. In October last year, he joined us here on the very first Agenda to talk about relations between Britain and China. But since then, of course, the COVID-19 outbreak has placed China and the rest of the world in a very different situation, a situation with many challenges, but also opportunities, perhaps, for the world to work together in what the ambassador has called a spirit of community and a shared future. And the relationship between the UK and China is key to that spirit. Mr. Ambassador, welcome back to the Agenda. You've said you think China and the UK will emerge from these testing times with a more mature and a robust relationship. What did you mean by that?
Since the outbreak, we have a very good cooperation in joint fight against the virus. Basically on 5 fronts, I would say. On the policy front, President Xi had 2 telephone conversations with Prime Minister Johnson. Both leaders reaffirmed their commitment to a stronger relationship between our 2 countries, reaffirmed their commitment to a joint fight against the virus, their commitment to building the golden era between our 2 countries. On the on the ground, we have supported each other. When China had a height of this epidemic, British side had 2 shipments of medical supplies to Wuhan, to Hubei. And now China is reciprocating the British support. We have provided most needed medical supplies, including ventilators. And now the experts and the scientists of our 2 countries work together on vaccine. Universities, businesses are working very closely. Fourthly, the health officials headed by Secretary Matt Hancock and the Chinese Health Minister had a very productive webinar joined by the scientists, medical doctors to compare experience, compare notes, and also compare experience in lifting lockdown, compare notes in control and prevention. Fifthly, our 2 countries work together on the international arena. Both countries are supporting strongly the WHO in playing a leading role in the global fight against the virus. So I think China and UK are partners in terms of building a global response to the virus.
There are quite a few politicians. So there are 20 MPs from the Henry Jackson think tank who are questioning this partnership. They say Britain may well have found out that it's too dependent on China for imports that are key to a national infrastructure and the economy. That doesn't exactly promise a golden future of relations, does it?
Yes, I notice, those politicians. And to be exact, there are 23 Conservative MPs and also some Labour MPs. They made some remarks, but I don't think they represent UK government position. In my conversations with the secretaries, ministers, senior officials, they all told me they are speaking for themselves. These words, their words, those MPs' remarks do not represent government position. Government position are exactly what I told you. They are committed to stronger relationship with China. They are committed to work together with China in this joint fight against virus. And also they do not represent the consensus.
Let's move on to the 2 sessions and the future of Hong Kong. Some pro-democracy leaders in Hong Kong have suggested, are saying that the proposed security law violates the spirit of Hong Kong's basic law as set out in One Country, Two Systems. You will say that that still exists, and in fact, the Premier was talking about that system still existing. But there are serious doubts about whether or not that does exist, the One Country, Two Systems, anymore.
First, I should correct you, if I may. I don't regard those people as a so-called pro-democracy movement. You know, they are anti-China elements. They are, supporters of breakaway from China. They are supporters for separation, even for independence. When we talk about one country, two systems, first we should recognize that this policy has been achieving great success since Hong Kong handover 23 years ago. Hong Kong people enjoyed unprecedented freedom and democracy. If you compare Hong Kong today with Hong Kong 23 years ago, everyone, even the people with the strong bias, should realize that Hong Kong people are much freer, in terms of choosing their chief executive. 23 years ago, who is electing the governor of Hong Kong? There's no democracy. There's no freedom to choose your leaders.
Well, this is what some are saying in Hong Kong. There's no freedom left. China's your parallel ambassador, China's UN ambassador, he's just blocked a UN Security Council meeting to discuss the legislation. China's UN ambassador tweeted that Hong Kong is purely China's internal affair. Mike Pompeo in the States saying Hong Kong no longer autonomous. How do you react to all of those?
Hong Kong is a part of China. Hong Kong, that's the problem with the Western politicians, American politicians, UK politicians. They still regard Hong Kong as a part of a place under British colonial rule. They still think Hong Kong is part of them. That's totally wrong. Hong Kong is part of China. Just like, California, Florida, they're part of the United States. Like here in Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, they're part of the UK. So it is a central government responsibility to take care of national security. In view of what we've seen, what happened last year, the violence, the riots, the terrorism, any responsible government has to take a measure to contain it, to stop this. So, Hong Kong government, I'm talking about special administrative region, they are authorized, to enact law according to basic law, the 23rd article basic law, to safeguard national security. One country, you can't separate the two. One country is the precondition. Without one country, there will be no two systems. So you have to realize Hong Kong is part of China. Then, we made a commitment that Hong Kong people will enjoy high autonomy, high degree of autonomy, and Hong Kong people will run their affairs, right? But some people, especially in Western world, intentionally or unintentionally, they ignore one country. They keep talking about two systems. But it's two are closely connected. If one country is undermined, there will be no prosperous of two systems.
Let's move on to the economy. They reckon that it will take Britain, or the analysts reckon it will take Britain at least 3 years to recover from the pandemic. At the two sessions, China decided not to set an economic growth target for the first time for a long time because of the uncertainty over COVID-19. How do you judge the global economic situation?
You're worried about the global situation, especially in the economic front. This pandemic really caused a very negative impact on the world trade, interflow of investment, even the people-to-people travel. And the difference between this impact from the 2008 financial crisis is that this pandemic really caused a serious blow to real economy. And so it really caused a downturn of trade, investment, and the global growth. But China now, we have achieved strategic success in containing this virus, and we have started the resumption of production. And I think China is now in the better place to move on. China used to be the engine and powerhouse of world economy. And we feel confident that China will continue to play that role.
Mr. Ambassador, a survey from Oxford University last week found that more than 4 out of 10 people in Britain believe to some extent China created the virus as a bioweapon to control the West. Now, the rights and wrongs of that survey is another question, but it's a problem that a lot of people think like that, isn't it, in terms of reputation?
I think this is totally wrong to accuse China to use this virus to control the world. China is a victim. China is not a culprit. China is not a producer of this virus. As a matter of fact, China, is the country that first reported this virus to World Health Organization, and the first country to identify the parasite, first country to share the genetic sequence with the WHO and with the rest of the world. So China contributed to the world. So that's how the world, the rest of the world, especially the scientists, medical doctors, can work on the vaccine and can work to build, to work together to contain this virus. I think the English medical director, Boyce, put it very rightly, that because China did it at a very early stage, that gave us time to prepare, gave us time to work on, the drug and the medicine and the virus. And, it's totally wrong to criticize, to accuse China. I think this is some American politicians try to politicize this issue, try to deflect their responsibility to contain the spread of the virus. So, as we said many times, this is not a time for playing a game of scapegoating, to play games of blaming, to play the games of stigmatizing.
Right.
It's a time to work together, to fight together against this virus.
And that brings us to the end of another edition of The Agenda. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher and Spotify. You can also find us on CGTN Europe Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube.
The most interesting questions.
Are there other living beings beyond Earth?
Will man or machine be in charge?
Great question.
Always have more than one answer.
Well, hold on, let me just draw up a list.
And always come from more than one person.
That's where the credibility lies.
The concept of having a machinery which is alive and evolving didn't wait for us.
The end of inequality of incomes and wealth around the world, can you imagine how difficult that is at the moment to achieve?
Every episode, Stephen Cole, Murray Beveridge, and some of the brightest minds out there shed light on the answers to some of the most intriguing questions.
There are two ways of looking at this.
Machines can't really discriminate between civilian and military targets.
The Answers Project.
Maybe we need to just look at this in a bit more detail.
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
The Answers Project, a new podcast from CGTN Europe.